Hello friends, I am Dr. Jitendra Joshi, the founder president of Global India Business Forum. GIBF is a well-known international business chamber and doing so many activities across the world, and we are connected to more than 154 countries. As you know, we are always happy to take the interviews and understand the opinion about different high commissioner, ambassadors, about India, their experience in India, and the bilateral trade between India and that country. So today we are lucky that we are at the embassy of Cuba in Delhi, and with me today the Excellency, the ambassador of Cuba with me. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to know, as Cuba is such a great country, and the relationship of India and Cuba is for ancient together. Many years we are together, and so much good relationship, political, even the bilateral also. I just want to know in a few words, what is your opinion as a High Commissioner about India and Cuba relations, basically?
Yes. Have you said Cuba and India have had a very long-standing relationship? This year, 2025, we are celebrating the 65th anniversary of the bilateral relations between Cuba and India. And this relationship has been based on mutual respect, solidarity and cooperation. Even we have a very high level political relations from that time until this moment. For example, last July, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Brazil, the Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi ji, he met the President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez. They have an excellent meeting. They spent more than 40 minutes discussing how to enhance the bilateral relations, not only from the political side, but to put more attention how to enhance the economic, commercial, financial, and cooperation relations between the two countries. So I see that we have many opportunities in front of us. India could be more present in the Cuban economy, could be a key player in order to fulfill our goals, which is to develop our country, to provide more quality of life to our people, and this relationship could be in benefits of both countries, Cuba and India.
Great. So, Excellency, today as we are in the embassy, and we are very happy that we are going to discuss more about the bilateral relationship between India and Cuba, and Global India Business Forum, the legal head, global legal head, Advocate Rajeshwari, she will going to discuss with you more about bilateral trade and the future of India-Cuba relationship. Thank you so much.
Will be my pleasure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. So it's a great pleasure to have His Excellency Juan Carlos for us to give us his views about India and Cuba relations. So I have a couple of questions to ask of you. Cuba has always been admired for its healthcare, biotechnology, cultural relationships, and heritage, and many other things. So how do you, and India also has, huge culture and very rich relations. And it's also got a very good technical background. And India has great heritage as well as technical advancement. And I can see that Cuba also has a lot of technical advances that it has made over the years. So how do you see the bilateral relations between these two countries, between these two rich but diverse countries with diverse cultures?
Well, we cannot compare, of course, the history of India with more than 5,000 years with the Cuban history. It's a young country, I can say. But that's been a long journey for us to reach to this moment, more than 500 years. Because the Spaniards came to Cuba in 1492. They discovered Cuba. But let me tell you a funny story. Because when Christopher Columbus arrived to Cuba, Cuba was inhabited by indigenous people. But he was looking for India, for the spices, trying to build the route of spices from India to Europe. And when he came to Cuba, he said the people that were living there were Indians. So in one part of the history, we were part of India as well. After that, well, Spain was a colony of, Cuba was colony of Spain for more than 4 centuries. More than 1 million Africans went to Cuba as slaves to work in the sugarcane plantation. And also more than 300,000 Chinese, people from other Caribbean countries as well, from Haiti, for example, from Latin America. So Cubans are a mixture of different, influences. This is what we call the Cubans. Cuban is, I can say, this nationality of Cuban gator, all these influences. We are a country very proud of our history. We took from the Africans also this decision to fight for our rights, for our independence. And I think in some way we are also sharing with India all these values, the values for the family, the value for our friends. And this is the kind of relationship that, in my opinion, we have built with India for more than 65 years. We are celebrating, as I mentioned before, this year 65 years of bilateral diplomatic relations that has been based in those values of cooperation, solidarity, respect for each other. But we also have been working together in order to cooperate in the multilateral organization, international organizations, in the United Nations and other spheres. So it is one that I would like to highlight to start this exchange with you. Well, from the very beginning, I think the different Cuban and Indian leaders has a focus how to continue enhancing our bilateral cooperation. For example, in some sectors, Cuba has developed very strong health system in our country, also an educational system as well, the biotechnology sector, because in 1960, just 1 year after the revolution, Fidel sent a message that Cuba is not a country rich in natural resources, that the most important value or the most important resource in Cuba is a human capital. Why we invested a lot in education. I remember the first action made by the Cuban Revolution was a huge campaign to defeat the illiteracy that was more than 80% of the population at that time. And we sent thousands of young people from the school to the countryside, to isolated village and houses, to teach the people how to write, how to read, because we said that culture is the only way to assure the freedom. It's a slogan of José Martí, the national hero of Cuba. So we have paid a lot of attention to, as I said, education, healthcare, also in biotechnology, in culture, because Cuba is a capital of culture in the Caribbean and Central America region. We have a ballet, we have a concert, orchestra, many in Cuba. We have also jazz, we have the Cuban song, many expressions of culture. And the people use in Cuba to enjoy all this performance every weekend, to attend any activity and so on. So the idea is how to continue reinforcing the bilateral relation between India and Cuba in these specific sectors. Of course, I can also appoint it that in many others, Cuba and India have many opportunities. For example, in agriculture, in sugarcane production. I remember that in 1970, Cuba was one of the leaders in sugarcane production at that time. Now it's India, as well as Brazil. You are producing more than 30 million tons of sugarcane. Cuba now is around 1 million, but we can cooperate. You have the expertise, you have an excellent sugarcane fabric here in India, and we have the land, we have the human resources. Let's cooperate together. Also in sugarcane production, in many others, in the agricultural sector as well. In mining, of course, is another sector. In ITC, because what you have done in the last 10, 15 years, creating this Indian stock with many applications and programs in informatics is amazing. So as a part of the South-South cooperation, as a part of the emphasis that India is putting in the cooperation with the Global South, we can also cooperate not only in favor of Cuba, but also of the Latin American countries.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing to know how India and Cuba can cooperate, especially in agriculture, IT, and such fields. You know, it's an amazing thing. So, which are the new fields which you think are the emerging fields in which both the countries can actually very cooperatively and synergistically engage?
Mhm. Well, I would like to focus in one, biotechnology, because we can take advance of the more than 40 years of this the development of this sector in Cuba. Cuba started in the 1980s to develop the biotechnology sector. I can say that Cuba was a pioneer in the world, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, developing this sector. At that time, was like a fiction, you know, to have the possibility to produce some medical, some medications, some products that can extend the life of the people. And Cuba started, as I said, from the very beginning. And India also today is a leader, no doubt, in this sector. You are not only the pharmacy of the world, you are also producing an amazing biotechnology products for the Indian market, but also for the international market. But let me put one example. In diabetics, Cuba has an innovative products, is EverProd P. This product is unique in the market. And India is suffering one specific disease, diabetes. According to the World Health Organization, you have more in between 60 and 70 million people suffering diabetes in India. Unfortunately, it's the so-called capital of diabetics in the world. 20% of those people suffering this disease goes for these diabetic food ulcers, you know, and 20% of them require amputation. These products that Cuba has, the EverProd P, avoid the necessity of the amputation because it's a vaccine that has an excellent result, has been tested in more than 20 countries. As I said, excellent results. More than 85% of the people that suffer these diabetic foot ulcers that are in risk for amputations, they has been saved. We are not talking about only those people. We are talking about families. We are talking about the society in general, you know, and to prolong the quality of life of all that are suffering this disease. We can say the same, for example, in hepatitis B, in cancer. We have also excellent innovative products in cancer that are testing now in different countries. So we can cooperate specifically in this sector, and this in favor, in benefits of Cuba, India, but also to the world in general.
Yeah, I really like this idea about cooperation in the case of diabetes, hepatitis, and such illness which are actually debilitating the country, attacking the entire country, and almost affecting the entire population, and it's a very serious health threat. So I really appreciate that. That's an area which we can focus on. So when you talk about biotechnology, are you talking about modified crops as well, or are you talking about hybridization, or are you talking about is that also something that you're considering?
Yes, we can consider all the different possibilities. You know, for example, we had experience in India because 20 years ago we founded a joint venture with one Indian company, and we were producing in all these years also different vaccines. We are cooperating with other companies now, for example, in the pentavalent vaccines for child. We are participating together with the UNICEF producing millions of vaccines in favor of the child population in the world. So we can cooperate in biosimilars as well. Cuba has a long expertise, a different research center in Cuba producing biosimilars. We can also share this experience. Cuba is open for transfer technology to India. It's a new possibility, because you know that Cuba is so far, is very expensive, the transportation from Cuba to here. We don't have the raw materials to produce the medication, so we're required to buy it abroad. Why don't we produce here in India? It will be easier to provide to the Indian population. So we are looking for new alternatives in order to improve our bilateral relations in this and in other sectors. For example, I was mentioning agriculture. Recently, the Cuban government decided to have the possibility to hand over to leasing the land in Cuba. It is the first time in more than 65 years of the Cuban Revolution that we decide that we can offer to foreign companies to participate in the agricultural sector, leasing the land. And we are leasing the land for 25 years, but this could be extended for one period more. So we are talking 50 years. And we can produce, you are self-sufficient in producing food in general. And in Cuba, we can do also the same path, because we should import more than $2,000 million every year in food. Why don't we produce in Cuba? And the result of this production, 30% could remain in Cuba in order to supply the internal market. But 70%, 70, can be exported by free for those companies that participate in the Cuban, making business with Cuba. And this could, assure the profit of those investments that they require in order to introduce the technology in our country. As you see, we are moving from the position. Cuba is looking possibilities in order to face this huge challenge that we as a whole are facing in this current world. But apart from, in the case of Cuba particularly, we are suffering this blockade from the US, everybody knows. So we are flexible enough to keep our independence, our sovereignty, our self-determination, but at the same time to join Cuba to this necessity to produce, to reinforce our economy, and we are taking decisions in order to achieve these goals.
That's amazing. So that's a paradigm shift in thinking, yes, of leasing your farms and your places for about 50 years or even 25 years. Mm-hmm. It's a paradigm shift in the thinking. And I think Indian industry and Indian agriculturals will be very, very benefited by virtue of this kind of new programs that you are trying to, come up with. So one other thing that I had to ask you of was, can you talk about a little about the processes, the policies which the foreign investors from India should be looking at, when they are entering the Cuban market? Mm-hmm. What sort of foreign policies that you have? Can you give us some kind of a short outline so that we have our SMEs and our companies can have some sort of an idea?
Yes. Let me refer first the advantage to make business with Cuba, because Cuba is located in the center of the Americas, in the entrance of the Gulf of Mexico. Cuba could be a hub for any business to connect India with all the Latin America region as a whole, in the Caribbean countries as well. Cuba has a political stability in our country because our government has the support of the huge majority of the Cuban population that recognize that the Cuban government, the Cuban revolution provide them the right to education, to health, to social security, to culture, to sports, and to a better quality of life. And we offer also a very strong, I can say, legal framework in our country. You can check in the websites of the Ministry of External Affairs and Foreign Trade and in many other ministries, the Chamber of Commerce of Cuba as well. We, as I mentioned, we have been very flexible in the last years in order to provide more opportunity for foreign investments in our country, including the possibility to have a company, 100% foreign company in our country. We have opened a new exclusive economic zone in Mariel. Mariel is a harbor 50 kilometers from Havana, but with all the infrastructure in order to locate the enterprises there and to have low taxes and more opportunity to employ people not only from Cuba but from abroad as well, and to connect those companies with the different sectors in the Cuban economy, for example, with the tourist sector, which is very important in Cuba. You know that we, from 1990 until now, we have built a very strong tourist sector in our country. Before COVID, we were able to receive almost 5 million visitors in a population of 10 million. It's a very good result. And even there is an Indian company today participating in Cuba with very good results. It's a Mutu group from Tamil Nadu, and they are managing in Cuba more than 11 hotels, more than 7,000 rooms. Of course, we must pay more attention to the tourist sector, how to connect India and Cuba, because Cuba could be an amazing and exotic destination for Indians. We are now trying to look for new way of transportation to connect India and Cuba. There is possible, for example, through Istanbul. We have 5 direct flights per week from Istanbul to Havana, but we can do also through Spain, through Madrid, or through Barcelona, or from Paris, Amsterdam, or Rome, or even from Germany, London. So there are many opportunities for Indians to travel to our country. Most of the Indians that travel to Cuba, they do from Canada, because you have an important community of Indians living in Canada, and they used to spend this strong winter in Canada, in Cuba, because in 3 hours you move from minus 30 degrees to plus 30 degrees in 3 hours. So it's amazing. And they used to spend even 1 month in Cuba enjoying this beautiful nature, excellent beaches, also the beautiful city like La Habana, for example, or Santiago de Cuba. So it's something that we will pay more attention how to promote Cuba as a destination.
That's an amazing thing to learn. Coming back, so if there is a company who wants to invest in Cuba, can you just let me know, a little bit about the kind of policies that you have for companies? So is it a one-window policy, or what sort of policy that you have? If you can give us some kind of an outline, that would help us gain some kind of insight into your country's business policies, and would help the Indian companies to understand how they can start their investment into Cuba.
Yes. Rather, in the Ministry of External Trade and Foreign Investments, or in this special economic zone in Mariel, we have a unique window system. The companies could introduce themselves to these unique windows, and they will receive all the information that they require. I also would like to invite the Indian companies to participate in the International Trade Fair that is organized in Cuba every year. This year is going to take place from November 24th to 29th. It is happening in Havana. All sectors are represented, not only for the Cuban enterprises and companies, but also from many other Latin American, Caribbean, European countries, from Canada, Mexico, that used to participate. And in this conference, in this International Trade Fair, you can get information directly from the ministers, from the different ministers, different Cuban enterprises as well that present their opportunity for foreign investments in our country. You can get the portfolio of foreign investments in Cuba, in which you can find more than 600 different projects in which you can apply if they are related to their business or the sector you are involved in. So there are different possibilities. I invite the people because they can attend this international trade fair. They can know more about Cuba. They can be in contact directly with the real, real companies and real ministers and ministries that are promoting the business with our country. And also they could fulfill a program organized by the Cuban Chamber of Commerce, and they can visit different installations, the factories, or different companies on the field, and they could touch by themselves and to know more about this, the different possibilities that we are offering today.
That's a nice insight. Thank you so much for that. Just wanted to know a little bit about renewable energy, because that's the latest thing, that's the buzzword and that's the latest technology. And old fuel is passé, and it's the newer renewable fuels that we are now looking, renewable energy that we are now looking at. So what is your perspective on that, and what's the kind of business prospect that would emerge from renewables?
Well, it is a challenge for Cuba today. We are producing more than 80% of the total energy in Cuba through fuel oil, and it's very expensive. We are not producing in Cuba. We have to import more than 50% of our needs of fuel oil and oil in Cuba. So it's difficult for us to sustain this kind of sector, And why we are decided to make this energy transition in Cuba and move as fast as possible from to the renewable resources. This year we are introducing in Cuba more than 1,000 megawatts of solar energy, solar panels, different camps in Cuba of solar panels. Also the next year we are going to introduce the same quantity, 1,000 more, but we are open to introduce other technologies. We are talking about the wind energy, the hydro energy. For example, recently the Director General of the International Solar Alliance, Mr. Cannon, he visited Cuba with an important delegation from this organization, including some Indian companies. And in the agriculture sector, we are going to introduce more than 15,000 solar power pumps, because it will, the farmers will be independent for the national grid in order to provide energy, in order to plan for the planning of the irrigation they are farmers. So it is a kind of technology that we would like to introduce in Cuba, and we are open also to make business with Indian companies. I am aware of these amazing results that also India has been reaching in this sector. You already reached the goals that you were planning for 2030, and more than 50% of the total energy in India is produced by renewable energy, and you are looking for the 100% in the future, including, of course, the atomic energy as well. But we are open to explore this opportunity, and I convey the Indian company also to explore the Cuban market in this specific sector.
And that's wonderful. So that's a very good message to the Indian companies that they should look at Cuba for renewable energy. That's another avenue which has opened to us today. Another question that I have for you is, now you have various chambers of commerce. So do you think avenues of organizations like the GIBF and others would help to promote the business between India and Cuba?
Well, let me first to recognize the GIBF, the role that has played in all this year promoting the cooperation with Cuba. We have been very active, participating in the different business forum that you have organized. I remember the last one, I wasn't here, but my predecessor attended it in Pune, and also the last one in Hyderabad was an excellent meeting with the participation of the government of this state. Also, this interview is an example of that you are doing in order to promote the cooperation in business with between Cuba and other countries, with India, of course. Also, well, the magazines, also the interview that you also have the possibility of the ambassadors and high commissioner to deliver their interviews in the magazine. Well, I think you have different possibilities to promote, and you have done, also to organize business delegation. I also would like to work with you in order to organize a future business delegation to Cuba, maybe 2026, and I can take the compromise to organize a good program for them in Cuba in order to explore all this sector that we were talking today in the morning. So I would like to thanks once again for all your support and your commitment in order to promote the cooperation with India, with the Latin American countries in general, and specific with Cuba.
Thank you so much for that. Really grateful to you for those kind words. Another thing that I have to ask you a few is, how do you see the relationship between the Indian and the Cuban businesses in the coming years? Because now India also has opened up a lot and its policies are very liberal. So do you think the Cuban companies would be interested in investing in India, as you have expressed that Cuban thinking has undergone a paradigm shift, and therefore there's a lot of opportunities and openings which are available in Cuba. So likewise, vice versa, would Cuban companies be interested to explore opportunities in India, because India also has liberalized its policies? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's in both sides, you know. At the same time, we are calling the Indian companies to participate in the Cuban market or in the Cuban economy. Will be the same in the case of India. You know, for example, today we were discussing with some companies the possibility to produce, for example, some beverage here in India, Cuban rum. Could you imagine to produce as a part of the joint venture here in India? Or, for example, in textiles as well, we can cooperate together. So I think we can do business but also in India, and I will very focus as well in order to attract some Cuban companies to approach the Indian market and to look for opportunity to invest. Of course, there are many challenges, to be honest. The two countries are very far, geographically speaking, from each other, because it's more than 12,000 miles from India to Cuba. We also have to promote more the businessmen, the entrepreneurs from India, from Cuba, to visit each other. I am sending to Cuba all time. I am sending different invitations to the different events that you're organizing here in different sectors. India is, every day you can find different events promoting business, promoting the international cooperation, and we should be more active participating in order to know more about the legal framework here in India, the opportunities. You have a very dynamic economic sector in India in general, and we also should learn more about what you are doing, the way you are doing, and how can we take advantage of this experience in order to promote the bilateral cooperation between the two countries. But I am totally sure that in the forthcoming future, we are going to grow our bilateral exchange. As I explained from the beginning, the political relation is at a very high level between the two countries. Has been in this way for more than 65 years. But in economic sector, we should do more. We should improve the economic relations between the two countries at the same level we have the political relations.
I completely agree with you, because it can't be anything more true than that, because Cuba has such immense opportunities that Indian companies should definitely look at that. It's either now or never. And I think with this kind of insights that you have given us, I think all our companies here and our entities here would be very much encouraged to look at Cuba, visit Cuba for tourism, for biotechnology, for IT, for agriculture, and for various other sectors. Explore the opportunities and perhaps achieve a lot of synergism between the two countries. There's lots of cultural synergy between us, and I hope that in the times to come, we will have better relationships and better business relationship, much more closer, and we will be able to bring up the economy much higher. Thank you so much for your words, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks to you. Namaste.
Stay.